This time, let us start talking about data collection. So, in statistics, data may be classified according to the following sources. It can be a primary data or it can be secondary data. When we say primary data, data coming from the researcher, the analyst, or the person doing the statistics himself or herself. So it's the researcher or the analyst, it's the one conducting the actual study, collecting the actual data. Whereas if it's secondary data, data retrieved or obtained by a researcher or an analyst, it's from a different source. The researcher is not the one conducting the study or not the one directly doing the analysis because the data might be coming from government, organization, or school records. It may be coming from official websites. It may be coming from library materials, or it may be coming from other researchers, other analysts, and other researchers. So with all of these data, and right now there's abundant data, and sometimes we even call abundant data big data, we have to make sure that we will be able to study our data well. And that involves knowing some sampling techniques. So, before we go into sampling techniques, there are two terms that we have to recall in relation to sampling techniques and data collection. These are the terms population and sample. Our data usually comes from the population. So the population is the aggregate or collection of all units of interest to the study. It can be people, animals, objects, places, events, amounts, and etc. It must be clearly defined so that we know what population we are talking about. However, studying the entire population or getting data from the entire population is too costly, tiring, time consuming, and impractical. So even though we want to describe the data, it might be too costly or too impractical for us to study it. That's why we shall refer to the sample, which is a subset of the population. And this is the one which is studied and where actually our numbers, our statistics come from. So just as an illustration, here we have our population and we shall get only a small portion of it, which is the sample. Another illustration, if this is our target population, then we shall get this one, which is our sample. Do take note that population and sample are collective nouns, meaning they refer to a collection of objects, people, events, or anything that we shall get our information from. Apart from these, we shall also remember these four important terms. When we talk of census, this is data from the population. Population. Meaning we are collecting data from the entire population itself. Let's put that word there, collecting data from the entire population. Whereas when we do a survey, not the other meaning of survey, but when we do a survey, this means we are collecting data from the sample. So this is the main reason why if the government does a census of the population, that means every single household should be considered, whereas in the survey, only a few number of households. Now, the actual data that is gathered from the population is called parameter or parameters from the population. So when we talk of data from the population itself, we call it a parameter. If the data comes from the sample, then we call it a statistic from the sample. So this is where the word statistic becomes singular, and if it's statistics, it is plural if these refer to data or numbers from the actual sample. So now that we are familiar with the basic terms referring to population sample and sampling techniques, in the next video we're going to clearly define what is a sampling technique.